piercing white eyes. So say if you want to, you can call me Uatu. Can I watch you? And you can watch me too. So say if you want to.
Good afternoon, Emerald City Comicon. Is this a Walking Dead panel or a Chris Sarandon panel? Good afternoon, Emerald City Comicon. That's more like it. Before we get to any Nightmare Before Christmas fans out here? Let's go for this one. Any Dog Day Afternoon fans out here? That's right. Little movie called The Princess Bride. I think Princess Bride wins out, but let's do one more. Fright Night. I think Princess Bride won that. Before we start our next panel, got a little bit of egos going on backstage here. Some gal thinks she's a princess and needs her handler brought out here. So, Princess?
You wave to everybody out there. Say hi. So we are here to help promote the Emerald City Comic-Con Kids area. Has anybody come here with kids this weekend? Has anybody had a chance to check out the kids section? Some pretty cool things to do there. Can you tell everybody what your favorite thing in the area is to do?
Rocket Stomper.
That's right, the Rocket Stomper. And who else did you meet there? Was there a real live astronaut that you got to meet there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was there, by looking at your face, was there some face painting going on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how about some balloon creations?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what about something about a secret headquarters for the Emerald City Caped Crusader and Crusaderette?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, have you had a fun time this whole weekend?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You seem to be a princess of few words right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweetie. Well, before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to everybody out there in the audience? What'd you like to say? Say, thank you for coming to Emerald City Comic-Con. Okay, well, can we wave to everybody and say thank you for coming this weekend? Aww. Thank you, sweetheart. Now, before we go, I do want to introduce somebody that you've probably seen a little bit of this weekend. Maybe once or twice, I'd say. So you're probably going to recognize him. Your moderator for this next panel is none other than the PR director of the Emerald City Comic-Con, Joe Parrington. Can we give it up for Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Colombo. You ramped that up for a bunch of disappointment. They're like, who's coming in? Who's coming? Who's coming from backstage? Hey, folks, let's get it going. This actor, you know, one of the things that Emerald City Comic-Con affords me, it's in my contract with them, is that I get to pick to do a panel. And when I heard that Chris Sarandon was being signed to Emerald City Comic-Con, I said, stop right there. I don't care if President Obama gets signed. This is the guy that I want. He is absolutely one of the best actors in the history of film and television, and I am excited to have him up here. Please, without further ado, welcome Mr. Chris Sarandon. You guys ready to get this going? As you wish. Chris, first off, have you had a chance to escape Emerald City Comic-Con so far this weekend?
You mean, have I had a chance to get outside the confines of this building?
Exactly.
Or my hotel?
Yes.
The answer is no. But I plan to take a little walkabout tonight after we're done.
Now, have you been to Seattle before?
I have been through Seattle before. It's a hard thing to describe, but I've worked a lot in Vancouver. And Vancouverites here, yes. Okay, we got a shout out from Vancouver fans. But I've never really spent any time here, and I just know so many people who have either moved here or who come from here who are just huge, huge Seattle fans, and I can see why. It's a glorious city.
Yeah, and Vancouver, by the way, stole a lot of our work, so you're welcome.
Yeah, right.
When you were in Vancouver, were you doing theater, film, both?
Mostly, I think I did a couple of movies there, and I've done a bunch of television there.
This is, you fit into the category of one of these actors that, I mean, it would be impossible for anyone that watches film and TV to not have seen something that you have done. I was kind of teasing the audience ahead of time. There's 4. I mean, you've done tons of work. Your resume, it's one of these, when I heard you were signed, it was dreading because I write all the press releases, and I'm like, I know your work, but your resume, you could print it out and like beat a whale with it. It's so long.
But we're trying to preserve whales.
Yes, no, we're not advocating. Emerald City Comicon does not advocate the killing of whales. But here's the question I have for you, and you've got 4 movies that are major hits with people and have staying power and legs for all these years. And it's Dog Day Afternoon, which you were Oscar nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Did everybody know that? You were the sexy devil next door, the vampire Jerry in Fright Night.
Right.
A little guy named Jack Skellington in The Nightmare Before Christmas. And a certain bit of royalty, Prince Humperdinck in The Princess Bride. 4 major movies. What is your favorite of the 4?
That's not fair.
I'm going to make you pick a child today.
You can't, no, you can't. It's really, it is impossible because each experience was so unique. I had such a great time on all 4 of those pictures that I can't really say that there's one that I prefer over the others. I mean, come on, you know, I got a chance to work with Tim Burton, Rob Reiner, Sidney Lumet, and who am I? Oh, and Tom Holland. You know, a pretty impressive group of directors. Casts that were extraordinary. I mean, I didn't get a chance to work with, actually the only actor I worked with on Nightmare was Catherine O'Hara, who played Sally. Yeah. Because generally speaking, you're in a studio alone doing the voice and then they animate to the voice. But one day they had Catherine and I there together doing Jack and Sally scenes. But generally speaking, all the cast that I've worked with have been extraordinary. I still consider many of them friends. Whenever the Fright Night crew gets together, we just fall into who we were when we were doing the movie together, and we have just a great time. Recently, there have been 2 different reunions of The Princess Bride. Recently.
Did everybody see that photo? It was Premiere
Magazine.
Magazine.
From E-Magazine did a reunion photo. Last spring, I believe. And then this fall, the New York Film Festival did a special 25th anniversary screening of the movie, and we all had another reunion. The only people who were missing were, sadly, Andre the Giant, Andrei Rusumov, and Peter Falk, who is no longer with us as well, and Chris Guest, who is with us but was working at the time. So we have had a chance to get together as well. It's just such a stellar, wonderful group of people, and the work was sublime in its doing. The process was just so great that I can't really. I'm sorry, but I'm turning your question on its ass.
Fair enough. So not as I wish.
No.
Okay. Now, Dog Day Afternoon, 1974, correct?
If you say so.
Okay. Up to that point, what primarily were you doing? Because this was a big breakout role. I mean, this, for the time, I mean, now here we just legalized gay marriage here in Washington State. Right. But
we have in Connecticut, too, where I live. I'm very proud of that.
But in 1974, And for those who haven't seen the movie, I mean, it's based on a true story of a bank robbery that happened.
Yeah, it happened.
And the gentleman in the movie is played by Al Pacino.
Right.
But the gentleman that was robbing the bank was doing it to pay for a sex change operation for his lover.
Well, Al's character was doing it to pay for the sex change.
And you played Leon, Al's lover.
Right.
At the time, was this a very risque, when this came out into movie theaters, and you got an Oscar nomination for this job, was it very risque to have a plot line like this?
Well, I would call it not only risque, but risky. In the sense that the sensibility in the culture at the time was not particularly receptive to gay relationships. And I got a lot of people who said to me when I went up for this role, and never mind when I got it, oh man, you know, you're going to be playing gay characters for the rest of your life. Except they didn't quite say it so artfully. And my point of view on it was, first of all, one of the greatest directors in the history of film, Sidney Lumet, was directing it. One of the great actors in American cinema, Al Pacino, was playing the lead. A couple of other not too bad actors, including John Cazale, Charlie Durning. There were it was a great sort of New York cast of fabulous theater actors. And I was a theater actor, basically. I'd never done a movie. That was my first movie.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I just thought, this is and it was a great script. In fact, the year that it was, that Dog Day was nominated for something like 7 or 8 Oscars, that's the Oscar that it won, was for screenplay by Frank Pearson. So I thought, well, you know, are we so narrow-minded that you think that that's all you're going to do for the rest of your life? No, it's a great part. I got to do it. If I'm offered it, I got to do it. And I went and I auditioned for Sidney and Al, and it was interesting because the note that I got from Sidney afterwards was a little less Blanche Dubois and a little more Queen's Housewife. Which was a great direction, and that's very much the way I took it. And so it was, and because the movie was about a dysfunctional relationship, it wasn't necessarily about gay lifestyle.
No, it wasn't.
Not at all. And so I think that's what happened when audiences saw it, is they saw this relationship that they could interject themselves into in some way, shape, or form, despite the fact that there were 2 men. Although the character that I played was a much more feminine man, the fact is that it was a relationship that was made in hell, and we've all been through those, right? Yeah.
When did you attend the Oscars?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
You're not one of those that was just a still stock photo of you in a corner somewhere.
No. It was, you know, my first movie. Are you kidding? Don't go to the Oscars, please.
Were you an odds-on favorite that year?
No, absolutely not. The guy who won, George Burns, was the odds-on favorite.
How do you go up against George Burns?
God.
Yeah, exactly. To pick on another one of your kids, and we got some cheers for it here, Fright Night.
Yeah.
You can applaud for Fright Night.
Give it up for Fright Night.
Great talent on that show. Roddy McDowall, one of the best actors ever. At that time, when Fright Night came out, there was, much like we have the vampire movies today and all that, at that time we had all the Jason and Halloween, and horror was very big. Fright Night, unlike a lot of those other films, has had legs, and it has stayed popular so much that they made that, with all due respect, awful remake. Well, it was pretty bad. I mean, they don't compare the two. Did you know you guys had maybe something a little bit different than the average horror movie at the time? Or did you go into this thinking, this is just going to be a gig?
First of all, I never thought it was going to be a gig. I got the script at a time when I was doing a lot of hoity-toity television. I was playing Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay in The Tale of Two Cities for the Hallmark Hall of Fame. I was playing Thomas Wolfe in You Can't Go Home Again. I was doing like these really great lead classical roles on television, and I was doing a few movies here and there at the time, and I thought I'm a very what's the word I want? I had my I had my nose up my ass a bit, you know, in terms of who I thought I was. And I got this script, and I said, oh, I got this vampire script. I can't do a vampire movie. I'm a, you know, a Tale of Two Cities. And I read the script, and I thought to myself, you know what, Chris, you're an idiot. Because you can't, the time to make up your mind about, my wife always says this, the time to make up your mind about somebody is never. And the time to make up your mind about something is never as well, in that what's important is the quality of the piece. And I opened that screenplay and I couldn't put it down. It was brilliantly written. It had a kind of classical form to it in the sense that it had a brilliant kind of act structure to it. The characters were very vivid. I couldn't wait to see what was going to happen. The lead character, the vampire character, was a great role. And I thought, Jesus, I got to meet this guy, the guy who wrote it, and who is, by the way, going to direct it. The only caveat was it was his first movie. He had never directed a movie. He'd written screenplays that had gotten made. And so I went to California, and I sat down with Tom Holland, and Tom literally described the movie frame by frame to me. He said, okay, here's the opening shot is such and such. Camera's doing this, and then such and such. And then we move into this, and then this happens. And then the camera goes up, and then this, and by the time he was finished, I said, when do we start? It was a no-brainer. And one of the things that Tom impressed upon me when we were talking was that he was a real classic vampire movie fan. He had been a fan for all of his life, horror movie fan too, as well. And that he was tired of movies that made fun of the genre, because that's the point in which the genres tend to dissipate and sort of die. And he wanted to revive it. And so what he did was he made a movie that had a tone that had fun with the genre without making fun of it. So there were a lot of jokes. There was a lot of homage to old movies in it. To conventions of vampire movies, which he felt very strongly about. But they were turned on their head a little bit, slightly, here and there. The whole business with the cross. You have to believe in order for that to work, Mr. Vincent, you know, that sort of thing. And I think that's why it's lasted, because the movie itself, it has a real integrity to it. That it has a belief in itself, that this is real, folks, that these relationships are important. We worked hard. We rehearsed for a week before we started the movie. We all did biographies for ourselves. We worked like a real acting troupe. And I think that work showed through in the movie.
Yeah, every role in that, every cast member, you believed.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
That was a great script, but if they had miscast it.
But that's Tom, too. That's
Absolutely.
Tom's choice of cast, and also his belief that we had to approach this from a very real character
A
standpoint.
few years after that, they did a sequel with Roddy and the lead actor.
I'm sorry, I don't remember. Yeah.
Did they ask you to return? I know they killed Jerry off, but did they ask you to return for that sequel?
No.
Well, that's that. Let's skip over a movie, and I want to talk. We got some applause, of course, for talk about enduring Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right.
How did you get roped into that particular role, which, I mean, I see everywhere on watches. I mean, you can go to the grocery store and see.
Disney has turned this movie into a extraordinary cash cow. And for good reason, because it's a great movie. And the character means a lot to a lot of different people.
And you switched. The singing was Danny Elfman for Jack Skellington.
Singing was Danny Elfman, and the singing was done before I even started.
Because I was wondering, my next question was, why didn't they ask you to sing it?
Because you don't ask somebody to sing Danny Elfman's stuff.
No, I'm just saying that it was already
not
a
even
done
Chris
deal.
Sarandon. I mean, I have a background on Broadway, in Broadway musicals.
That's why I was asking you.
But it was Danny's baby. Danny wrote the music. He wrote it for himself, for his voice. And essentially what they were looking for was somebody who could match Danny's singing voice in a believable way. And I just I was lucky.
So do you have a favorite, even though you didn't sing it, do you have a favorite song from Nightmare Before Christmas of Jack's?
Oh, wow. There's so many great ones. This is Halloween. That's a great song.
This is Halloween.
Yeah.
Do you know it?
No. I didn't sing it.
I didn't sing Star Spangled Banner, but I know that one too. We're not going to get any singing out of you.
No, not
Okay.
today, not today.
But a good experience doing that.
Oh, yeah. Henry, I worked mostly with Henry Selick in San Francisco, in the studio. They had this enormous kind of warehouse of a studio up in San Francisco where they had a number of little sound stages set up, and they were doing the stop-action shooting on 4 or 5 sets, as I recall. And I would go in once every 3 or 4 months. I'd record 2 or 3 scenes with Henry, and then they'd animate the scenes to the voice. I'd come back 3 or 4 months later. This is a period of like 2 years. This process is an extraordinary process, this stop action. I don't know if you guys have ever been lucky enough to witness it actually being done, but these are artists in the true sense of the word, the people who do this. And then when I was finished, there was a rough cut of the movie. I looked at it. There were some things that I wasn't happy with. There were some things that I think Henry wanted to change too, and Tim. And so after the movie was done, the rough cut was done, then I went back in the studio with Tim for 2 days, and we tweaked things. And that was it.
Very different experience as a theater actor to be basically stuck in a box in a recording studio.
Yes, yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, if you've done any recording, it's not a totally foreign experience, but yeah.
We are going to open up the Q&A here. If anyone wants to take to the mics here, we'll do that in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I would be remiss if I did not mention an obscure movie called The Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride.
You're one of the baddest princes ever to hit film.
Thank you, brother.
If an alien landed tomorrow and asked the question, what is it with The Princess Bride? What would your one-sentence answer be?
It's about the power of love. And an alien might not understand that that's the most deeply human emotion there is. So I'd have to probably explain it to him or make love to him. Or her. Or her.
Either one will work.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone queued up? It's hard to see. Go ahead, hon.
Hi.
Hi. So when you did The Princess Bride, did you expect it to be as like huge as it became?
I expected so much of The Princess Bride just because I was so I'd read the book back in the, strangely enough, in the late 60s, just after it was written, and Bill Goldman had given it to a mutual friend of mine, and I read it and just flipped over it, and I thought, oh, somebody's got to make a movie of it, and then Robert Redford had it for a long time, and he couldn't get it made for some reason, I'm not sure why, and then Rob Reiner ultimately, in the 80s, got it. He went to Bill Goldman with his partner, Rob's partner, and they had a great meeting with Bill where they just sat around and talked and told him what they wanted to do with it. And in fact, Rob Reiner tells the story of meeting Bill Goldman, being terribly intimidated by this Oscar-winning screenwriter. And they went to Bill's house and they talked to him, and they were talking to him about the movie, and Bill had this blank look on his face, and Bill said, "Excuse me for a minute." And he left the room. And Rob turned to his partner and said, "Oh, we're screwed. We're screwed. He hates us. He hates us. We're never going to make this movie. What are we going to do?" And just then, Goldman walked back into the room with a tray of drinks and said, "This is going wonderfully." and that was the beginning of the sort of the genesis of the making of The Princess Bride. So to answer the question, I thought it would be a great film. I was very excited about it, but the movie didn't do terribly well when it came out. And I think that was partially a marketing problem, that they didn't know exactly what they had. But it's a testament to the power of the screenplay, again, the great writing, the casting, and the directing, that it's endured. And it's endured in a very sort of lasting and enduring way.
So many colorful characters in The Princess Bride. If the role of Prince Humperdinck was already cast, and you had your choice, male or female, of any role, what would you have picked for yourself?
Probably Indigo. Yeah. I mean, such a cool, character, swashbuckling swordsman with insecurities, and yeah, it's a great character. Yeah.
Right over there.
What was it like to work with Christopher Guest?
It was, Chris and I were like brothers on the movie because we spent a lot of time together. First of all, because we had a lot of scenes together, but also because they had determined that we needed to do a lot of writing in the movie. So Chris and I, whenever we weren't working, we were out at a place called Rickmansworth, which is the studio where they train horses for movies. And he and I were writing all, like hours of writing here and there. And he had been given a huge chestnut stallion that was unmanageable. And I had been given a horse named Fury. A big black stallion, not as big as Chris's horse, and it ultimately was not as much of a pain in the ass as Chris's horse was. And when we weren't doing that together, we were riding in the car to the set together, when we were up in Sheffield and that part of the country. So we had a great time together, but he was also very challenging because he's really funny and really smart. So he would do things like challenge me to limerick contests in the car. Which is not my strong suit, but it was great fun. And we had a terrific time on the location as well because we were all in the same hotel. We ate dinner together every night. We played games. It was a terrific experience.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Right over here.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
I'd like the character of Jerry. What did you do for research in order to develop him, and did you have any input on the second birth of him with Colin Farrell?
To answer the second question first, I didn't have any input on that. They just called and asked if I would like to be in the movie, and I thought it would be fun. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, who do you want to play? And I said, well, I want to play the guy that Jerry devours.
Nice.
So that it's kind of, the passing of the torch in a way, the swallowing of the torch.
Yeah.
To answer the first question, a lot of them, how much research can you do on a vampire? I mean, you can do. I did a lot of vampire research. I looked back. I watched old movies. I watched Nosferatu, which is an inspiration for Tom for this movie, and I also did bat research because I thought, well, this is in ancient times. This is where this guy came from, and as it turns out, most bats are not vampire bats. Most bats are fruit bats. And I thought, and I said to Tom, well, if this guy's got some fruit bat DNA in him somewhere, how about if I eat a lot of fruit in the movie? And Tom said, great idea. And we used it all through the movie, in fact. The whole apple thing, rolling the apple and the big bite out of the apple, and Jerry's constantly. And that's the kind of director Tom is, because even though the script was very strongly, we didn't deviate from the script very much at all, that when people had ideas, he used them. I mean, he was very open and collaborative in that respect.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Right over here.
You were in a band at one point, actually opened for Bobby Darin, is that right?
Golly, yes. No, actually, we were his backup band. Because in those days, this was a long time ago. I don't want to say how long. He toured the country as a solo artist, but this is back in the days of, I don't know if you guys remember this, the song called Splish Splash, which was a big Bobby Darin hit. But he was a teen, he was an American Bandstand guy. And so he came through close to my hometown in West Virginia, and we were the big band there. We were the big rock and roll band, and so we were the backup band. And I'll tell you a little Bobby Darin anecdote. I'm sitting in the dressing room, right, and it's at a high school someplace. And I'm sitting there and I'm practicing my triplets and my paradiddles on a table or something. And Bobby Darin walks in, and I knew that he played a lot of instruments. He was multi-talented, really. And I looked at him and I was trying to make conversation. You know, I'm this 15, 16-year-old kid, and here's this big rock and roll star. And I said, hey, Bobby, you know, we got to have a drum contest on stage. And he looked at me and he went, I'll cut your ass anytime, man. And walked right on by, and I went,
Right over here.
Hi, Chris. So in Fright Night, one of the most pivotal scenes is that dance scene where you're trying to seduce the main female character.
right.
How long did that take to shoot, and how difficult was the choreography, and what was that generally like?
I honestly don't remember how long. I'm certain it took a couple of 3 days because it was a big nightclub scene. There was a lot else going on in the scene. Excuse me. But it was highly choreographed, particularly because of that whole thing that happened in the mirror, where, you know, we kept switching places and turning, and you saw, at times you saw me, and then when she would look, she would see nothing in the mirror. I thought it was a brilliantly conceived scene, and we had a regular choreographer there with us to choreograph it.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
First off, just want to say thank you for your involvement.
Thank you.
Nightmare's been like my favorite movie since I was 2.
Oh, thank you.
And actually, in that regard, I've always wondered if, for whatever reason, they like contractually made you do a sequel, and they let you
Made me do a sequel?
Yes. And they let you write it. What would a sequel to Nightmare be like in your eyes?
Oh God, I wouldn't deign to even think of writing a sequel for Tim Burton. I just say, just point me to the mic, guys, and I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'm such a huge fan of the movie and would be thrilled to do a sequel. And hopefully it would be under Tim's, you know, all-seeing eye, and maybe Henry would direct it again. Who knows? Who knows? But I wouldn't even, that wouldn't even cross my mind.
All right.
But thank you. Good question.
Thank you. Hi. Your role in Child's Play, what was it like playing the lead detective in that movie?
Hell. I say that only because Tom directed that movie as well and wrote the screenplay for Child's Play. It was just such a complicated movie to shoot because of Chucky. You know, you're working half the time with mostly animatronic figures. In those days, there was no CGI to create a Chucky. Chucky was, you know, he was a bunch of guys underneath this stage with tracks in the floor, moving Chucky along, and you know there were like 4 guys operating, 2 guys operating his hands, 2 guys operating his head. It was not fun to have to relate to that. The scene in the car where Chucky attacks Mike Norris, the cop, it was about, you know, whether the knife, the glint from the knife was catching in the camera lens. There was a lot of that. A lot of it was very, very, very technical. It turned out great. Tom did a brilliant job of it, but so much of it was just, you know, I spent one day literally sitting in a studio punching radio buttons with a camera over my shoulder all day. So, you know, it turned out great, but it was not fun to make. Yes?
Any current projects?
I'm directing a play in New York that hopefully will come in sometime in the spring or fall. We're workshopping it at the moment about a very serious subject about sexual assault on women. The series of 5 monologues from real people, real women who have been through this terrible, terrible thing. I may be going to Europe in about 15 minutes, no, to do a picture. Other than that, I'm at home and I'm playing with my grandchildren. I have two great, terrific, wonderful grandchildren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Johanna. I
Hi.
had an honor of meeting you yesterday in one of my biggest starstruck moments ever.
Thank you.
Know you from so many things, even down to your Law and Order episodes.
Cool.
And so, forgive me, what was your biggest starstruck moment of working with legends like Roddy McDowall and others?
Well, Roddy was one of them because, in a way, Roddy was one of the What? He was like he was in Hollywood at the time when things were, for want of a better word, the golden age of Hollywood. Roddy was in, if none of you have ever seen a movie called How Green Was My Valley, which was directed by the great American director, maybe our greatest, John Ford, with Walter Pidgeon, Maureen O'Hara, Donald Crisp, Sarah Allgood. I mean, the cast is just extraordinary. And Roddy was 6 or 7, I think, at the time, and he became a movie star when he was that age. And he went through his entire life being part of Hollywood. He had famous dinner parties at his house when, obviously, it was not when he was 6, when he was a grown man. If you went to Roddy's house, there was Elizabeth Taylor sitting at a chair, and there was Stephanie Powers, and he had screenwriters, and he knew everybody. He had one of the greatest film collections at his home in the world. Got into a little trouble for it, in fact. That was extraordinary. It's probably one of the great moments in my career, is to being able to work with him and talk with him about some of the people that he worked with, so that I got to experience them secondhand. Thank you.
Envious. And what is the role that I probably haven't seen you in that has meant the most to you? Not for money, not for kick-ass, not anything, just the one that touched you the most.
Interestingly, I did a movie for, I think it was the Disney Channel, called Goodbye, Miss 4th of July, which was a movie about, I'm Greek, and it was a movie about a Greek family who immigrated to, of all places, West Virginia, which is where I'm from, where I grew up, and where my father went to when I was before I was born. So it meant a lot to me in the sense that it was really my dad's story in a way. And so I got to kind of play him in a movie, even though the story was totally different. And as it turned out, the guy who wrote it dated one of my mother's sister when she was younger. So anyway, it had a special connection. Yes?
What was one of your favorite moments during the filming of The Princess Bride?
One of my favorite moments?
Yes.
Actually, I told Andre's daughter, is she here?
Yeah, she's over there.
Andre's daughter is here.
That's Andre the Giant's daughter over there?
Yeah.
Take a bow for your father.
She came up and talked to me yesterday, and I was really thrilled, and I told her this story. When I was beginning to work on the picture, and I was getting ready to leave, and we were going to be up in a location in a hotel in the Midlands of England, and I didn't really have an opportunity to take my kids and my wife with me at the time because they'd have been stuck in the middle of nowhere. So I went by myself, and I was explaining to my then 4-year-old and 2-year-old what I was going to be doing. I said, I'm going to be in a movie, and in the movie there's a princess, and they went, oh, that's great, Daddy. And I said, and there's like a guy who's a hero, and he fights with swords, and there's a prince, and I play the prince, and it's good, Daddy. And I said, and there's a giant. A giant? There's a giant in the movie, Daddy? How big is the giant? Is the giant as big as a house? Is he as big as a car? Can he get through the door? What's the giant's name, Daddy? How big is he? Well, from then on, it didn't matter. I'd call him on the phone. I was lonesome. I missed my children. I'd say, hi, honey, hi, Daddy. Where's the giant? Have you seen the giant yet? Have you played with the giant? What's he doing? What's he doing right now? Is he as big as a house? Is he as big as a car? So about 8 weeks later, my family arrives in England. And as soon as they get off the plane, I get a hug, a perfunctory hug from my daughters. And as soon as they hug me, hi, Daddy, I said, hi, sweetie, where's the giant, Daddy? So I spoke to Andre about this, and I said, do you mind if I bring them by someday when I'm not working, but you are, and at least they can say hello, and they'll be thrilled. And he said, of course, of course. So he was a lovely, lovely man. And so one day, he's working in the scene with Mandy, where the Brute Squad is collecting everybody. And he had a large trailer, needless to say. And it was really immense.
And so I had one of my daughters, the oldest, the 4-year-old, in my arms, and my ex had the younger one in hers. And you walked up the steps to the trailer, and then you turned the corner, and there was, at the very end of it, way the hell down at the end of it, was this very large chair, because they couldn't fit Andre into the regular makeup trailer. And he would sit there, and they'd come in, they'd make him up, and he'd relax there while he was waiting for his takes. And so I come up the steps, I turn the corner, and Andre's sitting in his chair, and he gets up to say hello. And as soon as he gets up, it didn't stop. And the older one started screaming, and then the younger one started screaming. Ah! So this goes on and on and on and on and on. I had to grab my ex, and we're out of there. So I walked back without my children, of course, and I went back into the trailer and I said, Andre, I'm so sorry. Please, I can't tell you. And he said, no, it's all right. They either run to me or run from me. And that was Andre. He had a very philosophical view of just who he was and the way people reacted to him. And he had such a grace and dignity about it. He didn't take it personally, but at its core, there must have been a part of him that was sad about it, that people wouldn't react to him in a normal way, because it was impossible to. He was 7 feet 6 inches tall and weighed over 400 pounds. But an extraordinary man, and one of the loveliest people I've ever known. Really a great guy. We miss him.
Chris, you were saying you guys had a 25th anniversary reunion last year, and everybody was there.
Yeah.
Wally Shawn there?
Wally Shawn was there.
Oh, okay. So he's not the Michael Nesmith of The Princess Bride.
No.
Okay. Well, he wasn't in any of the DVD extras. None of the
Right. Yeah, and I'm not sure why, but yeah. Wally was there. Bill Goldman was there. Rob Reiner was there. Robin Wright. Carrie Elwes, Mandy, Billy Crystal, Carol Kane. Chris Guest was the only person who couldn't make it because he was working.
The
mainly.
E-magazine photo shoot, you guys, it was great because it had a nice photo of Andre the Giant there as tribute
Yeah,
to him.
and a picture of Peter as well.
Hi, thank you for coming. This kind of two-part is one, in Princess Bride, what is your favorite line from the movie? And second, with all the cast of characters that were on that movie and all the different sets and everything, what was the craziest thing that happened on set? Not necessarily on camera.
The craziest thing that happened on set on
Princess Bride.
On Princess Bride. To answer your first question, I don't necessarily have a favorite one, but somebody came to me the other day, yesterday, and now this is my favorite. Because she said, whenever I walk into my house and my boys have completely destroyed the house, she said, I say, there was a mighty duel. Isn't that great? Thank you if you're out there. I'm going to remember that. And as far as crazy things on the set, there was always something going on because there were so many creative, funny people in that cast. I mean, you know, you walk down the hall and there was Mandy and Chris Guest and Rob Reiner singing doo-wop in this 13th century castle, right? Mandy in indigo clothing, Chris Guest in his Count Rugen, and Rob Reiner in his baseball cap.
Very nice, thank you.
Thank you.
What was your favorite scene to film in The Princess Bride?
I think probably two things. One, the dungeon scene where he turns the machine up on Wesley, just because you get to see the true nature of Prince Humperdinck. That is, you see his subtle kind of wiles all the way through the movie, but you don't really see what an evil dick he is. Until he takes that control and just, you know, ups it. And the other was the scene at the tree with Count Rugen, with Chris Guest, where he says, "I'm swamped." Because it's such a great, you know, I've got this to do, and I've got my wife to murder, and Florin to frame for it. I'm swamped. It's just, it's perfect. It's perfect writing.
That's why it was great. Sorry for interrupting.
That's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you and Christopher Guest intend a lot of the bromancy homoeroticism between the two characters?
There's bromance and homoeroticism in this movie? Well, no wonder it's so popular. No, that was not an intentional. There may be a subtext of it somewhere, you know, floating around there, but no. Thank you. I think.
Well, you know, hump was in the name.
That's true.
Hi, I'd just like to say thanks for the Fright Night movies. I thought they were really awesome.
Oh, thanks.
When I saw you appear in the second one, I was really happy because I was a big fan of the first as well. My question is, I was wondering, when you heard about them making a sequel, like, what was your reaction, and the fact that it came out a lot different than the original? What was your thought?
My reaction was, why not? And actually, after I read it, I thought, you know, this is a pretty good stab at reimagining it rather than remaking it. Because I think they would have been in trouble if they tried to remake it. And after being on the set and spending time with Colin particularly, who is a huge fan of the original, who said he watched it 50 or 60 times a year when he was a kid, and was very nervous about playing the role. And when I arrived on the set, was kind of, had a little kind of fanboy thing going. You know, he was a little nervous about meeting me, which I thought was very sweet, and brought me an amazing bottle of wine and a boxed DVD set of a movie called Vampire, which is a Carl Dreyer movie. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, which I thought was very elegant and kind of him, and couldn't have been nicer. I mean, was just such a gentleman, and is a gentleman. I'm a great admirer of his, and, as was the cast. Thank you.
What was probably the funnest character you've ever played?
What's the what?
The funnest character you've ever played.
The funnest character I've ever played. Actually, the funnest characters I play were for my kids when they were young. No, because I started out, when I first started out acting, after I was in classical theater for a long time. I toured the country with a classical theater company, and I went to school, got my master's degree at Catholic University in New York, in DC, which is a classical theater training place. But then I went into an improv company. And the improv work that I did was the most fun because it trained me to entertain my children. I mean, it helped me in my work too, but it also made it really easy to create characters and do routines and stuff. And that kind of laughter is very hard to top, children's laughter. And so they were, and still, now my grandchildren are my best audience. So.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a fan of
Hi. What's your name?
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you were ever allowed to pick a different character in the movie, what one would it be?
Ooh, that's a good question. Another character in The Nightmare Before Christmas? I think I would probably have wanted to play Oogie Boogie. Yeah. Whom I know, by the way, Ken Page, who's a Broadway actor, singer, fabulous guy, and who I run into every once in a while at conventions, a fabulous guy. But I am, and with that great voice of Ken's, you know. Yeah, that's the one I would want to play. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of kids, how many, you said you have 2 grandkids. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 grown children and a grown stepson.
Any of them act?
Thank God, no. I tell this story too. Some of you may have heard it. When one of my kids was 5 or 6, she was sitting with a friend, and they were having pizza with a friend's mom. And the friend's mom they were talking about what their daddies did. And so she said to her daughter, the woman said to her daughter, "You know what daddy does, don't you?" And she said, "Yeah, he makes wires in houses." And she said, "That's right, daddy's an electrician." And now you know what your daddy does, to my daughter, Alexis. And my daughter turned to her and said, "Yeah, he looks for work." You can see why none of them are actors. That was their experience. Whenever they saw me, I was on the phone, you know, I was going to auditions. I was still, it didn't matter when. This was, you know, all the way through my life. Still is, by the way. So, you know, I should say my stepson is a very talented composer, musician. And that's a tough one, boy. But he's, you know, sort of making his way. But it's a very tough way to make a living.
We have time for one more question,
Sure.
and I think you have a stalker because I'm sure that's the same lady that was over here earlier.
Let's go. Oh, I thought
Run,
there was more
Chris.
There. I'm sorry.
That's
I
all
told
right.
you I loved you.
Yeah.
That's where it starts.
Okay, not that kind of stalker. Dang it.
Yeah.
You're in one of the greatest love stories of all time. And no matter how many have come out, that is going to be one of the cases.
You're
the
talking
villain.
about Princess Bride?
Yeah, Princess Bride,
I
sorry.
was hoping you weren't talking about...
No. You're the villain in it. And
Child's Play.
That is so wrong. But you're the villain in that. And so I want to know about, it is such an iconic role that I'm sure there's tons of people that have recognized you for over the years. What is the craziest experience you've had of somebody taking you as Humperdinck?
Taking me what?
Taking you as Humperdinck and their reaction to you in that role. What's the craziest,
Generally,
funniest?
people don't, because there's, no, they don't really identify me necessarily. I mean, they see me and they go, "Oh, you were Prince Humperdinck, and I love that movie and everything," but they don't necessarily identify me strongly, personally, with the role. I had that experience. I've had that experience with a couple of other movies, but never with this one, oddly.
What
I
happened
think
with
it's
the other
because
ones?
people have such a fond feeling for it.
Sure.
Yes?
What happened with those other ones then? What were the crazy things?
There are a couple of stories that I can't tell in mixed company. I can't tell here.
Fair enough.
Chris,
Thank you.
This has been an absolute pleasure. I know for everyone here and for myself personally. And I've got one word for it.
What?
Inconceivable. Chris Sarandon, ladies and gentlemen. And he is beheaded back to his table. Everyone wants to go over there. We got a panel coming up in a few minutes.